Hi there. Up until now, I have been making videos of picture books that I have shown the pages of the illustrations and moved around on the screen. But I have some people who are interested in hearing stories that are for a little bit older audience. Not that they don't enjoy the storybooks, but that they might enjoy a story read from a book. So I have this book downstairs. It's called Fairy Tales, and it's written by Terry Jones. Now, for those of you that don't know, fairy tales were the oldest form of stories that children ever heard. A long time ago, kids didn't have books like this with covers and authors and that. They had people who made up fairy tales. The most famous of them were Andersen and Grimm. They were Danish storytellers, and they made up the famous one like Rumpelstiltskin and Sleeping Beauty and so forth. But there's some good stories in this book, and so I'm going to try, and we'll see whether anybody really likes it. But I won't be showing you any pictures except at the beginning, at the end. So here's the beginning. The story's called The Monster Tree. There was once a tree that grew in a wood not far from here. It was a very special tree. Its leaves were red and its trunk was green, and on it grew apples that were bright blue. And nobody ever ate the bright blue apples that hung from the tree because they knew that if they did, they would meet a monster before the day was out. One day a boy was walking with his mother in the wood and they passed the monster tree. "Oh, can I have one of those bright blue apples?" said the boy. "No," said his mother. "You know you mustn't, because anyone who eats one will meet a monster before the day is out." The little boy didn't say anything, but he thought to himself, "Piffle." And he resolved there and then that he would try one of those bright blue apples for himself. So that night, when his mother and father were safely tucked up in bed, he took his satchel, his bag, and stole out of the house and down the garden and through the village. The moon made everything blue and silver, and the houses looked dark and sinister, and he began to feel a little bit frightened at being all on his own. Soon he came to the end of the village, and he looked along the lonely path that led to the wood where the monster tree grew, and he felt even more frightened. "But I don't believe in monsters," he said to himself, and he set off along the path. Before long he came to the edge of the wood. The tree stretched up high above him, and the wood was dark and full of strange noises, and he didn't like it at all. But he said to himself, "I'm not scared of monsters." Then he summoned up all his courage and stepped into the dark wood. Well, he hadn't gone very far before he heard a hideous noise, and he saw a horrible pair of yellow eyes peering out at him from the darkness, and a terrible voice said, "You make a tasty meal for the monsters in the wood." He was so frightened that his knees knocked together, but he kept on walking, and he hadn't gone much farther when there was an awful screech, and something flew out of a tree and pulled his hair, and screeched, "The monsters are hungry tonight! The monsters are hungry tonight!" Now he was so scared that his teeth started chattering, but he kept on walking towards the monster tree. And just as he was passing an old hollow oak, a terrible creature leapt out in front of him with great long nails and burning eyes and fire coming out of his ears. And it screamed, "They'll break your bones, they'll drink your blood. Go back at once." And the boy was so frightened that his hair stood on end, and he nearly turned right around and ran home to his bed. But he didn't. And the creature gave a terrible shriek and rushed at him. The boy jumped up and grabbed a branch and then leapt over the creature's head and ran as fast as he could until he reached the monster tree. He pulled off as many of the bright blue apples as he could carry in his satchel and ran home as fast as his legs could take him. And when he got home, he jumped into bed, hid under the blankets, and ate one of the bright blue apples from the monster tree, all alone in the dark. And then he slept. In his dreams that night, he met more monsters than you could ever imagine in a whole year. And when he woke up the next morning, he told his mother all about the monster tree and his terrible journey in the night. His mother was very cross, and she took his satchel and opened it up to throw those apples from the monster tree on the fire. But when she looked into the satchel, she couldn't see any bright blue apples. They were just ordinary apples. Red. And that morning the villagers went into the wood to cut down the monster tree. But do you know what? They couldn't find it. And to this day, it has never been seen again. Whoops, sorry. And there's the picture of the forest with the trees. Why do you think they couldn't find the monster tree? Do you think you know the answer? Share that answer with me, or share that answer with somebody that was watching you while you watched me. I bet you can figure it out. There's a lesson there. You let me know. Bye for now.